Welcome, Dr. Mulgan. This is the second in a series of interviews about your work as a lawyer. In this interview, we're looking at your work advising and representing people who are facing serious traffic offences. Firstly, can you tell us about the kinds of inquiries you get relating to traffic offences? There must be times when you're dealing with people who have never been charged with anything.
They're a unique type of offence. As you say, it's often your average law-abiding person who's made a simple error and causes a ghastly accident and injures people. They've come out of their driveway every morning for 30 years, and then one morning they don't look, and there's a motorbike there. And not only is there a horrible accident, but they find that they're facing a criminal charge. They've never been in the justice system before. They're utterly bewildered. They don't know what to do. And sometimes you're actually dealing with a person who's been charged with one of these crimes when they themselves were quite badly injured in the accident. So not only do they have all of that to deal with, but a criminal charge as well. These people really do need some sympathetic sorting out.
So what are the types of traffic offences that people may face and the consequences of a conviction in each case?
Well, they're broadly careless driving or dangerous driving, and they can be augmented by careless causing injury and dangerous causing injury and or death, of course. Those are the things. What people are looking at, of course, is a criminal conviction. There is often a requirement to pay reparation to the person you've injured or to the family of a person who's died in the accident. And often community work sentences are given in this area as well.
Of course, you have expertise not only in the law, but also as a practicing doctor. Why is that so useful in your representation of people who have been charged with a drink drive offence?
Drink drive offences can get quite technical and they can get quite science oriented. You're looking at blood results, you're looking at how those things were arrived at. I had a case once where when you offer a blood sample, the blood taker takes 2 tubes. And so you can, if you want to, get a second analysis done at your own expense. And this particular client had a crown sample that was analysed above the legal limit and a private sample that was analysed below the legal limit. So we had to have a trial where both of the analysts who had conducted the tests had to be brought to explain how they went about doing the testing and the standard deviations that were applied to their data to arrive at the result they gave the court and this sort of thing. And it was useful to have a science background to be able to cross-examine those witnesses. And I add, we got an acquittal.
Any other examples where that background was helpful?
As I mentioned, sometimes clients in this area have themselves been quite badly injured. And what I'm required to lay in front of the court for their sentence to be passed is all the consequences this person has already suffered. And I'm often faced with a pile of medical reports and hospital discharge letters. And my background, it's useful being able to analyse that material relatively quickly and identify, well, what's wrong with this person? What's the prognosis? Is this likely to be lifelong? What can we say to the judge that this person has suffered? And judges are often quite sympathetic at recognising when defendants have already suffered enough if that material is properly put in front of them.
So if a client comes to you and they have been charged with causing an accident, what do you do next?
The first thing you have to do is look at the detail of what happened. It might not have been their fault, and you've got to get into that. I had a client recently. He was charged with dangerous driving because he hit the barrier on a motorway on an off-ramp. And his explanation to me was that what happened was my tyre blew. And when I looked at the statement of the police officer who attended the scene, he'd written down the same thing. Tyres blow. Now, the legal standard is that you have to observe the care and the skill of a responsible driver. And any responsible, careful driver is capable of losing control of the vehicle if the tyre blows. That's not your fault. that's not a crime. So with that detail, I went back to the prosecution. It wasn't easy. It took a lot of toing and froing. But on the morning of trial, they withdrew the charge on that insight. That's one example. Another example was I had a client who was the fourth car in a high-speed four-car nose-to-tail pile-up on the motorway. And obviously, every driver said, well, I was stopping short, but the car behind me shunted me. And then the fourth car in the queue gets blamed for the whole accident. But when you look carefully at the photographs, every car in the line had blown its airbags. Now, airbags don't blow unless the car is going at a certain speed, which you can get from the manufacturer. So that is proof that those cars were going at a significant speed under their own steam and failed to stop.
So let's come back to drink drive offences.
These things are very common. Thousands of people every year face a drink driving charge. Honestly, there is often not a lot you can do. Sometimes there is. Sometimes the procedures go wrong, and the procedures are very technical. So what needs to be done if a person's in this situation and they want to know if they've got a defence is to go line by line through the police procedure sheet and see, well, what really happened? And that is something I can do. I will charge a fee to go through and say, well, is there a defence here? Most of the time you're going to suck it up, but it's always possible to find out. And this is also an area where sometimes, not routinely, but sometimes, if a person has committed an offence, and generally at the lower level, and generally it's the first one, and they're looking at a disproportionate outcome like loss of career, it's possible to get a discharge without conviction in that situation as well. But as always, it comes down to the detail of the individual case. If you think you're in that situation, give me a ring, I'll have a look.
What about avoiding a conviction, discharge without conviction, for example?
So if a person, and this is generally a younger person early in life, is looking at disproportionate effects, if they're looking to enter a career or something like that, you can sometimes persuade a judge to do what's called a discharge without conviction, and that's where the offence is admitted. And even if a penalty is imposed, but a conviction doesn't get entered in the record because it's going to have a disproportionate effect. And those things are not straightforward, but I have been able to obtain them for a number of traffic clients.
So what role does insurance play in these events?
It's not widely recognised, but many car insurance policies in the fine print actually say they will pay out if a judge orders you to make a reparation payment to a person you've injured. And that is a very common outcome of these cases. So delving into the insurance policy and seeing what's there is something we do at a relatively early stage. Some of them will also cover the legal fee. So sometimes it's quite a nice surprise for the client to find out that they're covered in ways that they didn't think they were.
Finally, we know it can be a bit daunting for someone caught up in the process of a traffic offence to contact a lawyer. It can be a mix of emotions and feelings of guilt, as well as concerns about how much it might cost. What is your approach to hearing from people?
Well, my approach is that my number is there, my email is there. I do not charge you for ringing me up and having a chat about what your options are. And then on the basis of that phone call, we can sort out what are you likely to be looking at, what it is likely to cost you, and how can we best help you in this situation. So nothing to be lost by making a call.
Thank you, Dr. Mulgan, and your contact details will be available at the end of this video.
Thank you very much.